Alright, still in volume 3, and I got the grid on it, and the grid's kind of throwing me off a little bit. Okay, part 2, story 5, the Scarlet Cord. That's what this is called. I, of course, know the story, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. Okay, I know the basics of it anyway, but I like his version, or Uncle Arthur's version. But, okay, let me get back. Part 2, Story 5, The Scarlet Cord. Joshua waiting in the camp, wondering when Moses would return, but he didn't come. Perhaps he sent out a search party to look for him, but if so, they never found him. He just disappeared. See, they didn't know where Moses went to, and of course, they were looking for him. Then the Lord himself broke the sad news. Moses, my servant, is dead. And, then it's a quote, the children of Israel wept for Moses 30 days. For a whole month they grieved. All were grieving to think that this grand old man would be with them no more. For a while there was a feeling of emptiness and loneliness in every heart. Yet they could not mourn forever. There was work to be done. They must prepare for the great invasion. To Joshua, God said, arise, go to this Jordan, and then stops for a second. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. And I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Be strong and be a good courage. King James again. Joshua indeed needed courage at this moment. The whole burden of leadership had fallen onto him. The task of planning for the future was now his, and his alone. No more could he go to Moses for advice. From now on, he must make the decisions himself. He may well been okay. He may well have been a bit worried as he thought of all he had to do. And this may be why God said to him again and again, be thou strong and be very courageous. After this, he did on his own was to send 2 men across the Jordan to find out about the defense of Jericho and learn everything else that might be to help in planning the attack. The 2 spies got over the river all right and, mixed with the people going in and out of the city, managed to get inside without any trouble. Then climbed to the top of the wall and found some houses there and decided to rent a room for the night in one belonging to a woman named Rahab. Thinking they were all safe, they talked to Rahab and found out many things of interest. Suddenly, however, they heard a clank of arms below. The soldiers, cried Rahab, to the roof. The spies fled upstairs as fast as they could go. Rahab followed them. On the roof there were stacks of flax, which Rahab quickly piled on them. Then she hurried down to the door where the soldiers were already knocking loudly. So she took them upstairs and hid them under the flax. And this is the illustration. And that's why if you watch a lot of movies like I do, and that's why it or old movies. That's why they take and they go for the hay bale, and they always stab it to try to find the spies because of this incident right here. And let me read it, and you'll see why. In the king's name they cried as she opened the door, "Bring forth the men that have come to thee, for they are to come to search out the country, all the country." Rahab said she didn't know where the men came from or where they had gone. "Pursue after them quickly," she said, "for ye shall overtake them." Without searching the house, the soldiers left quickly and hastened to the Jordan, feeling sure that the spies must have gone that way. Meanwhile, Rahab went back to the roof where, removing the stacks of flax, she talked to the two men again. Flax is like she made paper because flax was used by the Egyptians to write, and it's a fabric. So she was making some fabric because they do say that was her business. She had a couple of businesses, but that was the one that was the legitimate one. "I know that the Lord hath given you the land," she said, "and that," and then a long pause, "all the inhabitants of this land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when you came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan." And then I pause again. "As soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt." In other words, they were idol worshippers. They heard the gloriousness of God, and their hearts melted. Rahab and her family started believing in the Israelites' God. And then Rahab was sure the children of Israel would enjoy the same success when they crossed the river Jordan, because their God is the God of heaven above and in earth beneath. So she tried to make a bargain with the spies. She would help them to escape if they in turn would promise that she and all her relatives would be spared when Israel captured Jericho. They agreed. So in the dead of the night, she let the men down over the wall with a scarlet cord. She had, she died. According to some traditions, she knew how to get red, and she made red things, which was a very hard color to make back then. Alright, let me get back to here. And red was more for royalty, that's why it was hard to find. Okay? And it was hard to make. Excuse me. When they were ready to slip away in the darkness, they whispered to her as loudly as they dared, "Bind this line of scarlet thread to the window." This was to tell the soldiers of Israel which house to spare. So she had to take the scarlet cord and put it in the window. And whoever had that, they weren't supposed to attack it. As soon as the spies were gone, Rahab pulled up the scarlet cord and tied it to the window of her house. And there it stayed for many days. Whenever Rahab looked at it and told herself, "That will keep me safe," she was sure of it, and that she persuaded her father and her mother and all her brothers and sisters to come and stay at her her house. They believed her story, and they came to trust in the Scarlet Cord. And how glad they were afterwards. For when the city fell to the Israelis, all the house, all that house were saved. That was not like it. Okay, here's what it says. It was just like when the Israelis sprinkled the blood of the lamb on the doorposts of their homes in Egypt when the angel of death passed by. Every home with the blood was spared. So it will be in the future. Every heart that has the blood of Christ on its doorpost, or the scarlet cord of his love in the window, will be spared in the day of judgment. And then, of course, it does have an illustration. It's by Fred Collins, and they superimposed this text over the top of it. But you can see, let me get on the side where I can see it. See it superimposed with the text. But there they are, coming down the scarlet cord. You can see the guy in red. And the painting by Fred Collins. The two soldiers sent by Joshua to spy on Jericho found refuge in Rahab's home, and she helped them escape under the cover of darkness on a red cord she hung from her window. So it could have been a really long, like this illustration has, very long one. And that was the end of part 2, story 5. Gonna take a break and then get ready for the next one. If this thing will work. Alright, I'll see you in a bit.